Welcome back to another episode of the world famous Nando Thoughts Podcast, brought to you by the one and only my chick and my kids. I'm Nando, the host. Come on inside, guys. Got a lot to talk about today. Sunday afternoon. Man. It's supposed to be a beautiful weekend, but you got some families right now buying caskets. That's real talk. Joe Biden down in Texas visiting those families that's mourning in that community that's going through the devastation of another mass killing. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. So come on in, guys, and welcome back to Nando Thoughts Podcast. And what's up to Gervonta Davis, B-More's finest? Another win. Man, Devontae put them paws on that boy. You might talk that talk, but you step in that ring, you better be able to walk that walk. Gervonta Davis, world champion. Man, he's a beautiful young kid, man. He's doing his thing. Actually, he's a young man, not a young kid. I'm enjoying watching this young fighter do his thing. He's a technician in the best of the ways. And it was a beautiful fight, man. I knew that kid was going to get stretched like carpet, but it is what it is. Boxing served him up, and we're going to talk about that as well. Why did boxing serve that young kid up, huh? Why did boxing put Gervonta Davis in a ring with that inexperienced fighter, huh? Let's talk about it. Let's go. DC, what's up? South Africa, what's up? UK, what's up, man? And all my friends out there that be watching me and rocking with me down in the underground. What's up? Nando in the studio going live right now. YouTube, what's up? Let's bring this down. I'm ready to go right now, man. I'm ready to take off right now, man. Watched the fight last night. It was an amazing fight. I knew Gervonta was going to put it on him. I knew he was going to stretch him. My question was, why did boxing have to serve this kid up, Romy, to Gervonta? It was no reason for that kid to be in the ring. That kid had zero skills compared to Gervonta. I knew Gervonta was going to dissect him and destroy him in a matter of time. It was no doubt in my mind. All the talk that kid was talking, it did not impress me at all. I know he had to do what he had to do to sell those tickets and make himself become popular and known. But let me tell you something. You do not play at that level of boxing with those guys that holding those belts. Those guys are technicians. Those guys have been fighting for years. That kid, Romy, had zero experience. The guys he was fighting was bums. He really wasn't fighting anybody. And to be talking the way he was talking so recklessly against Gervonta, a guy that's really about that life, about that fighting life, it was crazy. Mayweather, promotions, Showtime TV, and the boxing community should be ashamed of themselves putting that fight on. At the very least, they should be concerned about the safety of these fighters and making sure they match them up competitively, skill-wise, instead of just trying to make a dollar, because this young man could have got badly hurt last night at that boxing match. And luckily, he got out of there with a little bit of his senses, because, looking at the whelp on the side of his head and the devastation of that knockout, he could probably still have long-term damage. This is not a sport where you play around, because people have absolute bad intentions while they're in that ring, and it's the hurt business. I don't know why the sport promoted this and put this in front of the public. It was a sham. It was embarrassing, and that's why boxing is having the problems they have now, because they're not really working towards building the profession as it needs to be. You got so many people making money off these young guys taking these risks, and they should be first and foremost concerned about their health and safety and putting on competitive events. Now, Gervonta Davis is going to go on with his career and continue to do what he do and fight fights. But I think he should be fighting fighters at his skill level and not being put in the ring with these type of fighters, because the guys that's getting in the ring with these professional top tier level fighters, they're getting hurt. They're getting knocked out and they're getting hurt. And it shouldn't happen that way. It just shouldn't. I didn't enjoy seeing the fight, knowing that part of the fight, but I did enjoy seeing Gervonta Davis take care of his business, because he had to. But I just hate to see when these guys get in. I'll give you an example. I remember years ago, I mean, people that know fighting probably remember what I'm getting ready to say, but I remember years ago, David Reed out of Philadelphia, actually he was a gold medal winner at the Olympics back in the day. He was a good fighter. He was beating people. He was doing his thing. He was going through it. And I remember they announced that they was going to put David Reed in the ring with Felix Trinidad. Las Vegas, Nevada, Caesars Palace, outside arena. And when they made that fight, I didn't know if they was mad at David Reed, if they was upset with him and his business people, if you know what happened. But at one minute he was a sweetheart, he was the next De La Hoya, and then all of a sudden his management team, his team, and his people started deciding, hey, we want to do our own thing, we want to run our own career. And then the promoter served him up to a beast of Trinidad, Felix Trinidad. And Felix Trinidad destroyed David Reed, and his career was over. I hope that Rolly takes some time to learn the skill. I hope that with Floyd Mayweather being his promoter, maybe Floyd Mayweather can mentor him and show him some more boxing skills, because he didn't have any. I mean, he was just doing all the wrong things in the fight. But I watched David Reed literally get dismantled, and his career was over. And he got injured really bad. And I remember after that fight, Trinidad made a comment, I wish I didn't have to fight this kid. I wish I didn't have to go through him like this. I didn't want to hurt him. But the sport is the hurt business. And in order for you to make your meal, you got to do that sometimes. And you really don't get to pick and choose. Your promoters and your management and whatever feel that hey, is best for you. And at the time, David Reed was a world champion, but he wasn't that level world champion. And there's levels to that sport. And some promoters, like I said, if they feel there's no more usefulness of that fighter, they're going to throw you out there. They're going to put you in the ringer. And that's what happened last night with Rolly. I hope Rolly can bounce back. Rolly need to fight. I mean, I'm thinking at least 10, 20 more fights before he can even get to that level. The guys that he was knocking out to pad his record to 13 or 12-0, they really wasn't the skilled fighters that he was going to have to fight in order to become a champion. Those champion fighters are really experienced. They have, hundreds of amateur fights behind them. They've been fighting for years. They came up in the business. Rolly did not come up in the boxing business. He was a judo guy doing wrestling and judo or karate or whatever the hell he was doing, but he was not a boxer. And to all of a sudden take him from 12 or 13 fights and just throw him into Gervonta's world was dangerous. And luckily, like I said, he got out of there. And so I just advise the young man that if you see this podcast, or if anybody see this podcast, you need to take some time and you need to evaluate how you approach this business of boxing, because it's the hurt business and you can get hurt. And you're a young man and you're, you can just be knocked out, man, and in worse ways than you think, because those head injuries are real. And especially coming from these super hard punchers. I mean, it's just nothing to be played with. So with that being said, good luck to you guys that's managing Rolly. And Gervonta Davis, I want to see you fight Devin, man. I want to see you fight Devin Haynes next. Devin Haynes, a young champion out of Las Vegas, and Gervonta Davis need to be the next fight. So, yeah, Devin Haynes and Gervonta Davis need to be the next fight. That's going to be a great fight. They're going to match up equally skill-wise. I don't know if Devin has the power of Gervonta, but I think it'll be a good fight because they're good technicians, they're good boxers, and I think that would be a fight that's worth watching on pay-per-view. But I don't want to see Rolly fight anybody on the top tier ever again. I just don't want to see him. He's an entertaining young man. He know how to promote fights. He say whatever he got to say to get people interested in him, and for that, he's a showman. So thank you for that. We did enjoy that part of the fight because you kind of put some energy in the game. But be careful, young man. Be careful. You are fighting real dudes from the streets. That's about that life. That's what they do to feed their family. This is not a joke. This is not a game. This is not the internet. This is what people hurt people. And with that being said, man, yeah, boxing, man, it's kind of flat right now because there's really nobody running around doing anything. I mean, you had your heavyweight guys that was making it happen. You got Wilder was doing it for a minute, and he got handled by Tyson. Tyson is out of the game right now, so you got Joshua still moving around, and a few heavyweight guys. And then you got some guys in the light heavyweight. And of course, you still got Canelo out there. But I like to see I like to see some really good fights this year. The Charlo brothers, they're going to be putting some fights together. And we need an amateur farm system that's going to help these guys become famous sooner, kind of like an I'm sorry, NIL type of thing on a pro level for the amateurs. Even though they won't be considered pros, they still should be able to have that kind of investment and that kind of endorsement to help bring them along. There's a lot of good fighters in the country that don't necessarily have the promoters or the exposure yet. So I look forward to maybe the industry maybe transforming itself and learning how to really communicate to the public about these up and coming fighters, so we can kind of track them and get to them a lot more earlier than seeing Romy in the fight getting hurt the way he is, Romero getting hurt the way he did, because it just wasn't fair to him to have his people try to convince him that he was ready, because he was absolutely not ready for that type of level of competition. Switching gears, man. You know what it is, man. Here we are, another weekend of families shopping for caskets. This time, kid caskets. Of course, a few adult caskets. 21 people killed in a massacre that happened last week in Texas. Today, the president is in town meeting with some of the victim families, and of course, the officials in town. Even the governor was in town to meet the president. And gun control is at the forefront once again. You know, people ask me what I think about, all the killings going on in this country. And I grew up in this stuff. I'm kind of numb to it now, because I grew up in D.C. when D.C. was the murder capital. It was a time when I had more shirts of my dead friends than actually clothes to wear. I've been to so many funerals. I actually stopped going to funerals because I was just traumatized by seeing people that I loved and care about in my community murdered and dead over senseless acts of violence. And here we are, another mass killing. We're breaking the records of mass killings. You had the killings in Buffalo. You had the killings. I just don't want to even go through all the killings, but you got to figure out a balance of how do we help people, maintain their rights. We don't want to take any rights from anybody. I'm not down with the government coming in and stripping anything away from people. Like, I want people to vote. I also want people to be able to practice their Second Amendment and own weapons, but I want us to be able to do it responsibly as a community. And I want us to be able to have some solutions that's going to make us have that, where everybody can get what they need. And there's ways to do that when we all come to the table and with a solution driven agenda, instead of just trying to protect these corporations. And that's what it seems like the Republicans are doing right now. They're more concerned about protecting their donations from the NRA and the gun groups versus trying to protect their community. And it's kind of disgusting, because when you look at the Republicans and their position in politics and what they take, they're so anti-abortion, where they don't want anybody to kill their kids, but yet they want the industry, or they find with the industry that produce these weapons that result in these murders of these kids. They don't have a solution for that. So they saying, hey, you know what? It's not the guns, it's not the gun owners, it's not. But let me tell you something. That young kid had that gun legally. Based on everything I heard, had the gun legally. So we have to tie some liabilities to gun ownership. We have to have some responsibility and acceptability of what you're doing when you purchase a weapon, and how dangerous that weapon can be if it's not used right. And having a liability policy tied into it, some type of insurance or something when you purchase a gun, will at least give families some type of compensation for the illegal use of that weapon. So if you have a weapon and you use it legally, then there's no clause. There's nothing kick in. But if that weapon gets stolen, if that weapon get in the hands of the wrong person and some damage happen, and the criminal take that weapon and you're responsible for it, and you didn't store it properly, and all these things happen, then there's some liability to it. You need a liability if you have a car. If you buy a car, you have to have insurance. They won't even give you tags. And if you don't have insurance, they'll call you and say, hey, your tags are suspended. Don't drive that car. Boom, boom, boom. And they become criminal after that. And it should be the same way with a weapon, because it's so dangerous and it causes so many bad things that can happen if that weapon falls in the wrong hand. The manufacturers also need to be a little bit more aggressive and proactive of how they communicate to our community and how they market weapons to our community. I mean, what's really needed in our community as far as protection? Do we need an AK-47? Do we need these weapons that's causing these mass killings? We really don't. But like I said, that's kind of crossing that line of telling people, how you can practice your rights. And I really don't want to get into that either. So we got to figure out, like I said, I don't have all the answers. I mean, because I want everybody to have something out of that, but we need to come to the table on both sides of that situation, and they need to have some constructive solutions so we can be safe as a community, as a nation. And we need to stop these killings, because there's so many murders happening by illegally ill-gotten guns. There's so many murders happening by legal guns. So where is that line, and how do we get there? I don't have all the answers. The people that run the industry, the politicians that's responsible for bringing solutions and policies to make it safer and better for everybody, that's their job to do. Instead of fighting each other, they need to work together to make this a solution driven agenda. And everybody need to be able to agree to disagree, that we need to, come up with a better way of how we live with guns in our communities. Because right now it's not working. It's just not working. There's no reason why I can turn on videos and turn on YouTube and see a bunch of teenagers holding guns with super mags and all. It's just dangerous. It's crazy. It's reckless. And we need to value life a lot more. And it's not to blame any one side or the other, but we need to figure out how to get there. And we need to stop, running into our corners and come together, because it's going to affect us all. Right now it might not be happening to you. It might not be happening in your community, but if we allow it to continue to fester, it will happen to you. It will happen to your family member. It will happen in your community. And then it's going to be too late. So right now is the time to step up as a nation and make this a priority, because this is an epidemic of young people murdering people, of mass killings happening in our country. We are at an epidemic. And I'm petrified. I'm petrified of going to the mall. I'm petrified of going anywhere where there's a group of people at. I really just try to stay out of those environments, because at any minute, them things, those areas, those environments, it can go crazy. And I try to avoid it. I try to avoid it as best I can, because I don't want to get caught in a mass shooting. I don't want to be, somewhere and all of a sudden all hell break loose, because sometimes it's too late. You don't get to make it home. So for those people that lost relatives, I mean, just this year in senseless gun violence, hey, I'm sorry for you. I wish you guys the best. I know it's hard to overcome. I know it's hard to put your life back together, but please, just keep your head the best you can and get through it. That's all I can think about that, man. That's all I can say. It's frustrating to me, man, to see that. It really is. Here we are coming around summertime. Families was making plans for vacations, and school was getting ready to let out. And here now you got these families, they got to plan funerals. The community got to try to evaluate, how they get back and how they don't separate themselves from that. I don't want to hear no excuses about why the kid did what he did. The young man, rather 18-year-old man, did what he did. I don't want to hear excuses about how he was raised. I don't want to hear how he was depressed, how people bullied him. I don't want to hear none of that. I don't care about all that. All I care about is the fact that this kid grabbed a gun and killed some people. And how did that happen? How did those activities create themselves? Because that's what we need to figure out, how to make that not happen again. We need to evaluate those situations. We need to make sure that the people that own these guns and buy these guns are able and capable and responsible to have these weapons. And how do we do that? And what standards? And how do we, how do we figure these things out? You can't really tell what's in a person's head. And that's part of the problem. But we got to also look for solutions, and we got to work together as a community, and our politicians need to get together on this, because this is not a political issue. It shouldn't be a political issue. This is a life and safety and health issue for our community, and no corporation should be able to come in and have priority over the safety of our lives, our loved ones, our community, our children, our families. And it shouldn't be that way. And if you're a politician, and if you're taking your lead from a corporation that makes guns, a manufacturing company, or whatever the case it is, then you should not be a politician. Because I'm going to tell you one thing. You might think you're doing well. You might think you're cashing that check. But that person with that gun that's deranged, that's angry, might show up at your house, might show up at your office, might show up at your family's location, and commit that same crime that was committed this week by you not doing anything, by you allowing these loopholes and all these rules and laws not to be enacted to provide more safe guidance of how people possess these weapons. So we have to have a solution for that. And I don't wish it on anybody. I don't care what your political preference is. I don't care who you are in this country. I don't wish gun violence on anybody. And I do believe that you have a right to protect yourself if you choose to with a firearm in your home, And I don't want that to be taken away either. So that's why I say we need to have a balance of how we do this. And we need to have an honest conversation about what need to be expected and what weapons we should be allowing in our communities and for what reasons. So every gun shouldn't be just a gun, and every gun shouldn't just be allowable. We need to have restrictions on what weapons are allowed. We can't have guns on our streets that can outgun our law enforcement. We can't have, guys walking around with body armor to outgun our law enforcement. I don't know why anybody would need body armor other than our law enforcement. Body armor should be banned in our country. Nobody should be able to own body armor other than law enforcement. Start right there. That's simple. Why do anybody need body armor unless they plan on being shot at? And if you plan on being shot at, that means you plan on shooting at somebody. And the only person that need to not be shot at is the police. So we need to start right there. So that's the start right there. Let's start right there and say, okay, no body armor. You cannot buy body armor. Because when our police officers go and try to save us and rescue us and defend us, and they find themselves at a disadvantage because that person has body armor and more high capacity weapons than them, then it's a problem. And why would we want to put our officers at a disadvantage anytime they show up? They should always be the superior force in that situation. So let's start right there. Let's think about how we're going to also protect our law enforcement from these type of weapons showing up on the scene when they show up. And you know what I'm talking about. It just shouldn't be the case, but it is. So here we are. I seen a story about this Texas shooting last week while there was all these stories just floating around, and it caught my attention about this one CBP officer getting a haircut, and his wife texted him. His wife was a teacher, and his daughter went to the school where this shooter was at, and he had just sat down to get a haircut. And the officer, let me tell you the officer name. He's a CBP officer. I got the story right here. Let me tell you his name. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, guys. His name is Jacob Alvarado. So Jacob Alvarado is a CBP officer. He had just sat down in the barber's chair to get his hair cut in that town where the killings was happening at the school. His wife is a teacher there, and his daughter goes to the school. So his wife texted him and said, "There's an active shooter. Help." First message. The second message said, "I love you." He immediately jumped out of his seat, grabbed the barber shotgun, and ran to the school. When he got to the school, he and his fellow CBP officers that was on site went into the school first. They didn't wait a second. They ran right into the school and started to save, the kids in school. And I'm trying to figure out, how do the police officers chase this young man to the school? He get into the school, and they don't continue to go into the school and get this guy. They stayed outside that school almost an hour. Why didn't they continue to pursue that kid into that school? Because that's when he was clear, present danger. And I'm sure he heard gunfire in that school. And their job is to protect and serve under any conditions. But for some reason, they decided not to go into that school. This man jumped out of a barber chair from getting a text message from his wife and went to that school, and him and his fellow CBP officers breached that school in spite of commands from the sheriff department not to go in. And they was the ones that initiated the saving of that school. So why didn't that sheriff and those local officers that initially had contact with this kid continue their engagement until they disabled this kid, or, just have this kid, neutralized some kind of way and allow this massacre to happen? I had another story I seen the other day, and it was like a tweet or something. They was like, how can these police officers allow this to happen? But yet, if somebody else of a different background or minority makeup or whatever can get killed in traffic stops all day long, but yet they know this guy had a weapon. They know this guy had these kids in clear and present danger. They know this guy was slaughtering these kids, and they stopped and didn't go into that school. I got to tell you right now, me personally, I'm glad I'm not in that position. I'm glad I don't have that job. I'm glad I don't have a law enforcement career, because I'd probably be dead, because I would just throw everything to caution just to, to try to protect the people that I care about. And not only the people that I care about, the people I'm responsible for protecting. I would have ran into that school in spite of anything the sheriff would have said. I would have just had to lose my job, but I would have engaged that guy. I would not let him go into that school and have his way with those kids. I would have went into that school and try to defend and save those children as those CBP officers did. And for that, we thank you guys for that, because they needed your help, and that's what you signed up for, and you did your job honorably. Even though this guy was off duty getting a haircut, he knew he had to go get his wife and his daughter, and luckily his wife and his daughter came out of that school safe. Unfortunately, a lot of families didn't. And I'm done with tears. I'm done with excuses. I'm done with politicians trying to twist and turn and make it something that it's not, just because they want to appear or appease a certain group of people or organization that they feel they can have an advantage by having financial support from. No, it's time to stand up. It's time to support the community, support this country, and support the nation on gun safety. We need gun safety, gun control. We need sensible ownership to make sense. And we need to also have some liability, responsibility attached to being a gun owner. So some kind of way we have to get there. I don't know how do we get there, but I know that officer that was running to that school, that left the barbershop with that shotgun, had every intention to do what he needed to do because he knew his family needed him. And I still cannot for the world understand how and why a decision was made by the local sheriff not to breach that building sooner. What did they think was going to happen? This kid had already committed to doing what he was going to do. They chased him. He jumped out his car. He ran into that school. Why would they stop? Why? That's the question. Why? Why would they stop? I can't answer it. I really can't. So last week we had some elections take place in the country. Some of the Donald Trump endorsed candidates didn't do so well. I think there's an awakening in this country politically on both sides. And I think we're getting tired of the noise that the political parties are throwing at us, and we want reasonable, responsible politicians back in place. We want this thing to be leveled out again. We don't want the crazy chaos that's been going on in D.C. to continue anymore, because it's not productive. It's counterproductive into what we need as a community and how we need to communicate and govern ourselves. And so now with the Donald Trump endorsed candidates getting knocked off, which was a good thing, and some of the Republicans are realizing that this is not helpful. This is not helpful to have Christian policies dictate our political politics. It's also not helpful to have hateful bigotry policy dictate our politics. So we are a nation of so many cultures that we need to have an equal balance of power at the table to govern our country. We have a beautiful democracy that people all over the world wish they could have. And we need to get back to respecting and understanding and communicating in an effective way of how we want to live in this nation together as one. And the way we get back there is by eliminating all these lunatics that's inside our political power system and get them out of there. No matter what party they're in, we need to push them out. We need to get them out of there. We need to have sensible, reasonable, practical practitioners back into our politics that's taking care of their community, that's voting with sensible, reasonable ways, that's not letting corporate agendas guide them based off of votes. And when you look at the Liz Cheneys and you look at all these other politicians out here that's trying to straighten the ship a little bit, if you may, they need to support, or people in those communities need to support those politicians. And it's not always the most popular thing to do, when you try to do the right thing. And so now it's time for us, the American people, to vote in sensible, practical politicians that's going to bring some type of stability to our political system and not pushes at each other, because right now it's not the time to do that. We need to really be united as one nation, and our politicians need to be the leaderships of that uniting. And so from the Donald Trump's Trumpers all the way down to the Democrat lunatics, we need to get rid of all of them And we need to bring in politicians on both sides that's going to be respectful, A, of our communities, and B, of the position and power we put them in, and practice the politics of being respectful to everybody, not just to one side, but to everybody, and listen to the arguments of what the communities are saying and find solutions to make it better for everybody to live in these communities. And with that being said, it's going to take some cleaning out of Washington, D.C. And I hope that, Donald Trump never have another chance to hold another political seat in our country, or anybody that he's promoting or pushing towards it, because you have these politicians now that want to set up gerrymandering districts. They want to take voting rights away from people. We should be adding voting rights, not taking away. We should be encouraging more participation in our political system. Our young people should be having confidence that when they get out there and vote, they voting for themselves and their people to represent them for a better future. So they bringing in the politicians that's going to understand where they're coming from. We don't need to lock it up no more. We need to bring term limits into our politics as well, because now these people don't feel like they're so entitled to these positions. If they know they're going to be there for a limited time, that they're going to do what they need to do and move on. We need to make sure that we have a political system that's open for everybody and that the system works for everybody. And with that being said, how do we get there? We get there by voting for people that understand what the responsibilities that we give them as voters, and how do we expect them to act once they become, empowered. We don't want you to be empowered to a party. We don't want you to be empowered to a corporation. We want you to be empowered to us. We want you to be empowered to the public. We want you to respect us as a nation, as a people, and we want you to unite all of us, and don't divide any of us. If it's a racist, bigot group, we don't want you to support that. We want you to speak out against it. We want you to, say, no, not this. If it's a gay group or whatever the case is, we want the gay people to have human rights. We want them to have civil rights. We want them to have protection because they're American citizens, regardless of their sexuality. We don't want to judge people off their sexuality. We don't want to take health rights from women because they choose to have a decision, or they choose to make a decision based off their health of pregnancy or whatever the case is. We don't want our government to be making decisions on how people make their health decisions. It's just not right. It's not American, and it shouldn't be happening. And we need to put protections in place that if you want to practice your health care, however you choose between you and your doctor, that's your choice. Whatever means is possible. If it's a legal medical means it's possible, then we need to make sure that protection stays in place so people can have any choice they want to make. Be it abortion, whatever. The abortion issue is a religious issue. It has nothing to do with our politics. It shouldn't be in our politics. We need to get this Christianity slanted message out of our politics, because even though we have Christianity in this country, we also have Judaism, we have, all these other religions too, and they have equal say at the table. So it's not one religion supersedes everybody else. That we need to stop that. It's just a mess right now, and we need to stop it. We need to stop letting the Christian movement take over our politics and control our politics and put in power people that's trying to impose their views of the world on us. It's not the case. This is a democracy. The people rules. No corporation, no religion, none of that stuff. It's the people rules. We need to get back to that. We need to respect people and not take anything from them. Our government should be supporting us, not in restricting us from anything, any type of movement in our country. Yeah, I just had to say that because I think a lot of people fall one way or the other without thinking about the other side of things, and it's not healthy to be that way. You need to be a little bit more open-minded about how people see the world if they don't see it the way you see it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because everybody has a different experience in this country. I have a different experience. You have a different experience. And that's just the reality of the world we live in. But we live in a beautiful nation. And when we all understand and respect and listen to each other, then it's even more beautiful. And we need to get back to that. We need to get back to seeing everybody as our neighbors and our brothers and sisters, and not as our opposition and as the ops. There's no reason for that. There's no reason to feel threatened by another American in this country because of what? Why? How do you benefit by holding me down? How do you benefit by holding me back? How do you benefit, and how do you live your life and think that your life will be better if my life is worse? It don't work that way unless we all prosper in the same way, unless we all moving in the same way, unless we all growing in the same way. Then we're suffering some way. We all suffer. When one suffer, we all suffer. So we need to make sure that as a nation, as American people, that we grow together and we support each other and we encourage each other to be who we are and be proud of who you are. You shouldn't have to hide behind anything. If you're gay, bisexual, trans, whatever the hell you are, that's your business, that's your sexuality. It has nothing to do with politics. Same way, when it comes to people health care, it has nothing to do with politics, and it shouldn't have anything to do with politics. And politicians should get out of people's lives when it comes to those issues. If you're an American citizen, you should have protection under the law equally as a human being, no matter who you are, who you want to marry, or whatever you want to do with your life. It should be protected and it should be respected by our government, not restricted. That's just a take, and that's a good way to live your life, because then you got other things to worry about. We really do have other things to worry about. We have climate change. We have energy issues to worry about. We have housing crisis that's out of this world right now. I don't have no idea why housing is so expensive, but I do know there's a lot of predatory practices that's taking place right now. A lot of people are being taken advantage of, from the people that own trailer parks all the way up to the people that's buying these multi-million-dollar homes, to these banks that's loaning money that they don't even have, to all these housing programs that only people who's taking advantage of are corporations. It's so much shenanigans going on right now in our country, and making our country such a horrible place to be in right now, because we're so indebted to our government and to our corporations that it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. And I don't know how we became this way, but we need to get back to where everybody want to help each other out. The American people is benefiting from being just that, an American person in our country, with benefits and opportunities that's given equally to everybody. And we need to get there. However we get there. Summertime, it's right around the corner, guys. First time in a long time, a lot of people have a chance to get back out and, explore. Be careful. And know that COVID is real. COVID-19, I don't know which strain is out there right now, but I can tell you this. My family right now is currently suffering from COVID. I got a son and a daughter that's currently infected with COVID. Me and my wife, we don't have it, but we've been testing like crazy. Thank goodness that we still have all these free available rapid tests at Walgreens and all the other stores that you can take them. I'm boosted up. I got everything but a dog tag right now. I got so many booster shots. My wife too. But like I said, we haven't showed any positive tests yet, but we've been testing like every 4 or 5 days, and my kids has been showing positive for the last 2 weeks. So please be careful, because COVID is still out right now. And I advise you guys to constantly test yourself, even if you're not showing any symptoms. So if you do find yourself infected, you can isolate and potentially save and protect your family members and the people you care about in your community from you becoming an infector. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just constantly, just trying to stay safe as best as I can. I'm hoping that I don't become infected, because I am in contact with my children. What can I do? I got to be around my family, but at the same time, I'm wearing a mask in the house. I'm washing everything. I'm spraying, everything down. I'm constantly doing this every now and then. I drop my guards, but luckily so far it's been safe practice has been working for me and my wife. But my son and my daughter currently is showing positive tests. They're not showing any symptoms, but at the same time, I still feel subject to, having to be safe. And I was being safe for the last 2 years, and we just never ran into it. But my kids are more exposed because of the schools. They have to go to schools, and they might have picked it up at the school. They might have picked it up anyway. There's no telling where they picked it up at. But with that being said, be safe. I know you're going to go out and you're going to enjoy your family this summer, but try to keep some type of bubble around you and your family and how you interact and when you touch stuff and when you do things, and wear a mask as much as possible in spite of what anybody think or say or look at you or whatever. Try not to eat in public places if you don't have to, and just use, some precautions that will keep you as safe as possible. They're saying that everybody at some point or another going to catch this thing. A lot of people are showing back up at the hospitals. More hospitalizations are taking place. And they're saying most people that has, the COVID, the booster, whatever the case is, are surviving and not getting as sick. And I'm not looking forward to any of it. So I hope I can just avoid it all and not have to even experience it, because I'm petrified by it. I have all kinds of issues going on with me, my health wise. I got high blood pressure, I got anxiety, I got everything going on with me. So I don't want to have to try to survive it. And Lord knows I don't want to see a machine getting hooked up to me because I might not come out. So I told you from the very beginning, when they first said you can get a vaccine, I broke the line. I jumped in front of a bunch of old ass people and got my shot. I didn't give a damn because I wanted to get my shot as soon as somebody came up with a solution. And I understand that, the older people, they had first dibs, but you know what? I don't give a damn. I'm going to get me a vaccine. If it's out here, if it's supposed to protect you, I'm going to use it and get protected. So I advise you, if you're still out here floating around thinking that you don't need it and it's a fraud and science is bullshit and all that, hey, that's fine. That's why you want to live. But believe me, for that shot you don't take, I'll come and take it. And I need to save myself the best I can. That's all I can say with that. That's all I can say with that. Heading into the new week, guys, there's a lot going on. Just be careful, man. Just be careful heading out to the summer and wherever you're going. Be careful on the roads. There's a lot more people driving a lot more aggressively because they're just anxious about getting where they're going. I noticed that. And be safe, man. I'm not going to hold you guys up. I'm getting ready to get out of here, man. I said what I had to say. I said my piece, man. And with that, I'm out, man. Have a good week. Thanks for watching another episode of the world famous Nando Thoughts podcast. Of course, brought to you by my chick and my kids. Next week, guys, I'll be back. Next Thursday night. So check me out. NandoThoughts.com, my trash ass website. I got to update it. So I'll be getting to that real soon. And don't forget, man, be safe, be kind, be respectful, and be nice. I'm out of here, y'all.